Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Success Builders. So today we have with us Nigel Harman. How are you doing, Nigel?
Hey, Ricardo, I'm doing awesome. How you doing today?
Great, thanks very much. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah,
No
pleasure to be
problem.
here.
No problem. So where are you calling in from?
From Vancouver, Canada.
Cool. I love Canadians, such good people.
Yep.
Always happy to have a Canadian on the show.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, we're known for our politeness and manners. So it's definitely a lot of nice people in Canada.
Awesome. Hey, so the audience is going to be really excited to hear about your story. I know that you have a business called Focus Systems that's all about data-driven solutions. And tell us a bit about your professional journey and what led you to doing what you're currently doing, and then explain to us exactly what it is that you offer businesses today.
Yeah, it's funny because where I'm at is completely different from where I started. My whole upbringing, I was in martial arts since the age of 7 till like late 20s and still active right now. So I've been in this industry for well over 20 years. And that was my life. That was my identity growing up. I was an athlete. I was very good at what I did. I competed at national levels, international levels. I was on the national team. I got to travel and compete all over. And that was really what my identity was. And so growing up, it was all I thought about and all I really cared about. But, after 15 years plus of going really hard at it and competing at like the highest level and like devoting your life to that, I got burnt out. And I took a back seat from competing and I decided to just kind of teach. And I taught for a good number of years, like 12 years. But I realized when I was competing and I was traveling all over the world, the thing that I loved most was just exploring and traveling and having new adventures and just having that flexibility. And so I wanted to have a life where I could have that freedom to travel wherever I wanted, to have that location freedom, time freedom, and then eventually the financial freedom as well, right? And
Yeah.
so I knew that I couldn't really do that with where I was at. So I really wanted to position myself in a better way so that I could have the time freedom, location freedom. So I started seeing a lot of people creating, digital marketing agencies online. And I said, oh, okay, I want to try that out. And so I thought, what's going to be the fastest way for me to take a crack at the online space? And so I was like, well, I know martial arts, so why don't I just do martial art marketing for, martial arts schools? And so I was like, okay. And then I slowly started getting a clients. I was a freelancer for a number of years first. And I didn't know anything about it, like literally completely different realm, right? Doing marketing. But finally, after like a good 2 or 3 years, then I was starting to get some results, getting some confidence. And then I said, okay, I think I know enough to go into this full time. And then I decided to go full time in my business right at the end of 2019. And that's when I actually landed one of the biggest clients ever in my martial arts agency. And he was a franchise owner for one of the biggest martial art franchise schools in the world. Um, and then that was like right at the start of like 2020. And as soon as I got that, boom, whole world shuts down.
Oh.
And yeah, like,
Murphy's Law, right?
oh my,
Murphy's Law.
exactly.
Yeah, jeez.
And then I was strapped with the task of like my job as a marketer is to generate deals for martial arts schools. So it's like in a time where everyone's talking about like social distancing to save 12 feet apart and all this, my job was like, hey, you want to actually get as close to someone as possible and learn how to choke someone out. So, I mean, that was a challenge to say the least. And I was like, oh man. And then they were trying to switch to online stuff. And I even did like online martial arts classes. And I was like, man, this is not it. It was just like terrible. And everyone had a terrible experience in 2020. But that was like, it was definitely an uphill battle. But I grinded through that for a good year. And yeah, long story short, like that client of mine, the big franchise owner, it wasn't working out with the online stuff. And then plus on top of that, they are very data driven. And to be frank with you, I wasn't. And they end up churning. And that was a big turning point where, a lot of my work and effort was into getting like this deal, and it crumbled by the end of the year of like grinding it out. And I remember at the end of 2021, I was burnt out and I was very anxious. And I'm not usually an anxious person at all, but every time my phone would buzz, I wouldn't want to look at it because I just thought someone's mad, someone's complaining, and I was just having very, very high stress. And I remember at that point, I was like, this is not why I decided to create this online business,
Yeah, of
to
course.
be stressed out. And so I decided to shut it all off because I was also the one man show. I was the chief everything officer. That's my version of a CEO. I
Yeah,
did
exactly.
everything, right? I did the sales calls, marketing, fulfillment, everything. And so like I remember it was just like a lot. And then I had all these, and I was like setting appointments for my clients and all that stuff. And it was just way too much. And so I decided to take a break from that and like shut it off. And then I was like, okay, what do I do now from here? And I just remember in my day to day, like Monday to Friday, I would be doing the usual day-to-day stuff. And then on the weekends would be like my fun time where I'd be like, okay, no one's bothering me. I could build systems. And I'm like, this is amazing. I love building systems. And I found that was actually something I was very drawn to. And then what I realized is like every business needs systems.
Yeah.
It's important for every single business to have systems, right? And I was like, why don't I just do this full time? Right. But even then I was like, okay, I could build all these systems, but one of the systems I never wanted to touch was data tracking, because admittedly in high school, I was not a numbers person. I actually failed math 11. And I was like, even when I was building systems for people, I was like, man, whoever can figure out this data thing, like that's a huge opportunity because I can't figure this stuff out for the life of me. Like, this is crazy. This stuff is so confusing. And I remember reading this one book. It was called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I don't know if you're familiar, but it was a very pivotal book for me. They had this one line. It was pretty much about structure and systems and stuff like that. And this one line said that essentially business are run by systems and people run the systems. Something like that. I'm
Right.
kind of
Yeah,
butchering.
yeah. That
Get the point.
sounds good. Yeah.
And so that was kind of the epiphany for me when I was like, huh. And then I thought back to this whole data tracking thing. I was like, I lost one of my biggest clients ever because I didn't know my numbers. And I just thought it like I kind of labeled myself as not a numbers person. But that one line made me realize that, hey, maybe it's not necessarily that I'm not a bad numbers person per se, which I am, but like I got better. But the real problem behind it was not because of that, but it was because the system that I was on that was flawed. And I was like, huh, if I just think of data as a system, then I could build a system. And then from there on, my whole goal was how do I make this as simple as possible so that someone like me that actually failed math and is not a numbers person can actually implement and understand this stuff, because I know I'm not the only one that's suffering from this. And so that's when I started to take essentially like my mess to become my message and be like, now I want to be data driven. I want to be able to never have to go through that experience that I had with churning that one client because I didn't know my numbers. And I want to actually make this weakness a strength and then help other people with the same thing. And that's how I kind of got into data tracking. And now it's just weird because like people come to me and I coach a lot of businesses on what to look at for numbers, but it's all about the system, not necessarily the numbers and the tracking and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I got into the data tracking.
Oh wow, that's actually really cool. And I can actually relate to that because even in my podcast, I sometimes ask people if they would like to be interviewed. And on a couple of occasions, I don't say all, but maybe 30% of the occasions, I get asked, all right, so tell me a bit about the numbers of your podcast, like how many downloads you have, how many views and this and that. And I'm like, well, okay, so I've got like just over 20 episodes and we've got over 2,000 followers between the page and my personal page that I shared to, and our highest one's got over 700 views. So that that's about all I can really tell them, right? Because that's all I really know. So
Yeah.
I always feel a bit lame, like when I get asked that question, I don't have any data or any metrics to show. I'm just kind of just telling them some arbitrary things. Um,
Yeah.
and then I tell them about the future that yeah, I'm going to be posting on YouTube as well pretty soon and Spotify and all that. So yeah, so I fully understand how you can get put on the spot when a business comes to you and asks you for your numbers and you could caught with your pants down. You don't have your numbers.
Exactly. It's not a good feeling. That's for
No,
sure.
it's true. So, what are some of the most popular data that your clients are looking to collect and display?
Yeah, well, it really depends on the level of size of company they're typically at, how many, how much revenue per month they're doing, also how many team members that they're working with, right? We work with any size, like from startups to like eight-figure companies. But our bread and butter is usually high six-figure to seven-figure companies, and they just want to clean it up and have more predictability in their business and more efficiency and profit. So for those people, the numbers that they're gonna be wanting is very different than someone that's like a startup. Because like a startup, they're gonna want more marketing and sales heavily driven. Not saying that you wouldn't want that as seven figure and eight figure, but in the when you're starting to scale up, like the higher revenue generating clients, they're looking at more things of like LTV, what is their cost per acquisition, what is their ascension rate, how many referrals are they getting, like who are the top producers. There's so many things, and we actually there's so many metrics. With so many metrics, the big thing that we recommend is that because one of the problems is data is very complex,
Yeah.
right? And paralysis by analysis is definitely a real thing. And so that was where I was at. I had way too much data, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with any of this. And so I wanted to have a way that's simplified and easy for people to just grasp like that, right? And so what we do is we break it down into different departments. So we have one executive dashboard that's going to be like a 30,000 foot view for the CEO and all the leadership team. And that is we break it down into five different department dashboards: marketing, sales, client success, business, finance, and fulfillment. And so the CEO dashboard or the executive dashboard, the purpose of that is to have we like to take two main like driving KPIs to be on that executive dashboard, and then the team leader is going to be solely responsible for those two metrics, right? And then the I like the visual. Like imagine if you're like a CEO, you're on the beach, you pull out your phone, you look at your stats, your executive dashboard, you're like, oh, everything's great, everything's up according to pace. Or, oh no, there's a fire here,
Yeah.
like, right? And then from there, from the 30,000 foot view, then you could go into the individual dashboards and then find exactly where the fire is in that department, right? So now you're getting a really like a much more like minuscule like viewpoint of like where that exact problem is. And so that's just the first thing, getting the numbers. That's really like phase one. Phase two is all the systems, and then the AI on top of that. I'm a huge fan of AI now to make it even simpler. And what we do now is we essentially attach AI to our dashboards and numbers. We also attach different metrics that like benchmarks of what we want to hit. And then based off the theory of constraint, or like, like where the weakest link is in the chain, it's like it'll actually identify where the bottleneck is in your business. So where you need to focus so that you can unlock the most amount of growth in your business. And it'll also do things like forecast your numbers. So if you have certain goals you want to hit, it'll say what numbers you have to hit in order to hit that. And then it'll also give you the like based off your numbers so far, this is how far you're from hitting it. And then at the end of the month, quarter, or year, it'll summarize it and be like, this is where you're at. This is where you said you wanted to be. Where do you want to go next? Right. So it's just like the AI component makes it so much easier because it's just like automated, and then you're just getting reports either through your Slack or your email. And then it's like they don't have to like sift through all these different like spreadsheets and softwares and all that stuff. Like it's there in front of everyone. So it, it,
That's
it
pretty
depends.
awesome.
Yeah. But like going back to your question, like what are the top metrics that people want to track? like I said, the paralysis by analysis is a big thing. We don't want to have like 50 different
Mm,
KPIs, like especially for the executive dashboard. I'd say like what are the top 10 metrics that you can track that can tell the entire story of your business? And like that is like as a CEO, just look at those numbers, like the top 10. And some of them will be changing, right? It really depends on what type of business you have. Um, so it's really the thing that we're looking for is uh how much growth are we having? Like what is the EBITDA? Are we increasing in revenue size? Are we able to lower the cost per acquisition and increase the LTV? Like those are like the main ones that we want to do. Always increase LTV, lower cost per acquisition as much as possible. So those are the main ones, especially when we're like doing like paid ad advertising.
awesome. And actually, my mind has been ticking while you've been saying this, and I actually can really see the application to monitor performance. Like, for example, a business
Yes.
wouldn't know if there is a bottleneck in fulfillment if they didn't have metrics. So, for example, let's say um, delayed deliveries. Like I was from the automotive industry. So let's say that clients are only receiving their cars 4 weeks after they've signed the contract or signed a deal, whatever it may be. Um, and the car's only arriving in 4 weeks or longer. Then you know that there is a fulfillment problem, and then you can go and address that problem. So the way I envisage it, the way I would like to do it is I would like to put an exception report in or like an exception notification that like you said, you want to have a benchmark. So you want to ideally deliver a car within 3 weeks. If it goes outside of 3 weeks, then you've got a problem with your transporters or your warehouse or something like that. So then when you start getting deliveries outside of the 3 weeks, you start getting exception reports and you start then being able to see, right, our deliveries are slowing down. What's happening? Okay. And then we can go and have a look at that. So that's the way I would take it, and how I would approach something like that. So
Exactly, exactly. That's
yeah.
a huge one, right? Because even something like that, it's like that's where identifying where the bottleneck is super crucial, right?
Mm,
Because a lot of times people will focus on the wrong areas and they'll put energy and resources in the wrong spot because maybe that is not necessarily where the bottleneck is where they're focusing in. But a lot of times if people are focusing on the wrong things, then you're going to get the wrong output, right? So for example, like we've had like I always think of this like the surgeon always wants to cut, like the
yeah.
pharmacist wants to prescribe pills, and like the closer always wants to close. Like for example, we had a company that was doing close like around 100K a month, and they got there from just sheer will of like marketing really hard and like really good sales, right? And they're trying to get to the next level. And the founders, they're very good at closers, right? And they had a really like killer sales team. And like I said, the closers always want to close. So they just want to improve their closing rate. But their closing rate was like 45%, like very high. Like industry standard is
Yeah.
like 20. And they're
Yeah.
like doing that,
That's good.
right? But they wanted to get that even more, which is, fine. The improvement's always great. But if we're saying like just like resources and like where to focus that's going to unlock the most amount of growth, their show up rate was like really bad, like 50% or something like that. It was like 50, close to 60. It was like 50 to 60%. And so they had much more opportunity for growth if they just increased the amount of touch points and the nurturing to increase that show rate from 50 to 60% to like 80% or higher,
Yeah.
right?
Sorry, could you just say again what was 50%? I didn't hear the word properly.
The show up rate.
Oh, show up rate. And what does that mean?
Like, okay, we have 10 scheduled appointments for today,
Okay, got it.
and
Yeah.
5 of them show up. So the show
Yeah.
up rate's 5 out of 10, 50%. So
Right.
that's where I was saying like, hey guys, your show up rate is very, very low, but your closing rate is like killer. Instead of trying to just get a few more, go from like 45 to like 50%, like a 5% increase. Why don't we try to go from like I think they're like 50 something, like 50, let's say 55%, 50 price to like a 70% or 80%. Because
Yeah.
there's so much more room for growth there. And so that's what I mean. Like that's one example of like focusing on the right areas that's going to unlock the most amount of growth. But it's hard to identify that if you're just trying to, improve the thing that you're good at. Because a lot of times people will get like companies will get to a certain level, but what got them there is not going to get them to the next level,
Yeah.
right? And so that's why we have to give them that kind of that vision and that clarity of where to focus next,
No, that's actually
right?
really good. Like, a few simple tweaks would solve that problem. Like, probably that they're not
Yeah,
sending out enough reminders for the meeting, or they need to contact the customer, make some personal contact via DM or something like that, and say, "Hey, the meeting's coming up." Like I actually did to you today. I said, "Hey, are we still
yeah,
meeting in 3 hours' time?" They probably weren't doing that. I mean, I'm just guessing, but
yeah, yeah,
that's yeah. So just those tweaks can actually really help to improve the show up rate. And those are
yeah,
things I'm already doing automatically because I know that from sales and stuff. Fortune's in the follow up, right? And follow up is not
yeah.
necessarily after, it can also be before to make sure that people are going to come
Yeah.
to the meeting.
Yeah,
And
that's persuasion, right? Once you're able to actually give them enough content to for them to identify, like that they want to talk to you, and then they're like reading about your stuff, and then if you give them an incentive to show up, then it's higher likely chance that they will, right? If you give them a good reason, enough like internal intrinsic motivation to want to show up and see this call and see what's the value for them to actually show up, right? So that's what we actually focused on. And it was funny because they weren't even really tracking their show up rate. And they're just like, I just want to get my, yeah, they were going to hire a sales trainer to help with sales team, close better. And it's like they're kind of ignoring the whole show up rate. And they're just like, they just kind of like, people will show up or not. It's like, no, no, no. There's so much room for
yeah,
growth here.
exactly.
So it's like
Yeah,
really just plugging the holes, and like if you have a leaky bucket, right? You pour water in the bucket and you're
exactly.
bleeding out the sides of the where the holes are. It's like, well, patch that hole first before you add more water, right? So that's kind of like what we did for that example. But yeah, there's a lot of people that's like they don't really know. Like most companies are not data driven. Like the
No.
vast majority are not. But everyone
Yeah.
understands, like everyone knows the importance of it. Like everyone. Like, should you know your numbers? Yes. Do you watch Shark Tank? Yes. What do they ask? What are your numbers?
What are your
Right?
numbers? Yeah. If you
What
go
are
in
your
there, you
numbers?
fumble the numbers, you don't get no, yeah.
It's
Exactly.
over.
It's
It's
over.
over. And that's another thing. Like we help companies like private equity companies as well that are looking to acquire like businesses and sell. And a lot of times like people that are buying and selling, their numbers they don't know it either. And like how can you sell a business if you don't know your numbers? It's like it's not gonna happen. And so what we want to do is also not only help the company that's trying to buy and sell, or in this case sell, but we also help the investors by helping the acquisition company so that they'll know if this is worth looking into and worth acquiring. And these people are also going to help if they know the numbers, it's going to increase their enterprise value, right? And
Exactly.
so, yeah, it's a double whammy essentially.
I love that. I actually really like the idea of, using data to increase the value of your business. That is actually adds so much extra goodwill to the company that it's actually, really mind-blowing, in fact. And
Sure.
yeah, so and also like we discussed, the opportunities to improve and make things more efficient. Um, I'm very much an advocate of the concept called Kaizen, which is continuous improvement. And
Yeah,
yeah, that's a Japanese term, and uh, I've always loved it ever since I heard about it at university. And you know, the fact that you know the only way that you can have continuous improvement is to know what to improve, right? And
yes,
the data gives you that information, give you that knowledge so that then you can go and improve it and implement things like Kaizen. So
exactly.
yeah, exactly. No, I
Like,
absolutely love this. So, what does a typical customer journey look like when they contact you for the first time and sort of go through the explorative phase? And yeah,
yeah,
just run us through that if I were to contact you from out of the blue about getting a data solution.
yeah. So again, we work with a lot of different mod sizes, so it does depend. Like right now, like if you were brand new, we have a community that we're building. It's still small. We're still building it up right now, but it's essentially people that want to hit the ground, build the foundations right from the get-go. And so it's just like a weekly coaching call with me and my partner, and it's like, hey, they come in like, hey, how do we set up the structure? Like, what should we be tracking? Like how do we input the data here? Like it's just all the logistical stuff and the technical stuff, which I'm terrible at. My partner does all of that. So if you're starting off, we just help you get that whole thing set up because I really do believe that you should set that up from the get-go because we've had companies that came in that were like, we had a company that was doing that had 150 clients, and he wanted us to revamp his entire data structure and everything and get like historical data of like all the actions that they've done, and like looking at it, I was like, because it's just so much already. It's like if they were to just set that up from the get-go, then it would have made it so much easier. But then just like going into that, sometimes you can't even do that. Like especially when it comes to like tracking like actions from like let's say like a lead to appointment to a appointment to show it and show to close. Like a lot of times people have like pipeline stages and they'll like move it along the pipeline. And then what we do initially is we help you track that and own that data so anytime an action comes out of an action happens, we extract that data, we put it in like a spreadsheet, which is where it just collects all the data, all raw data. And this part of the data setup is just meant to just have raw data. It's just a list, right? It's not meant for you to gain insights from or anything like that. It's just as much as you can. And then once you have that those numbers, then you can start making formulas for it to look better. And then we fit it into a dashboard. So then that's where all the calculations are made, and that's where all the pretty graphs are. And that's where you actually make insights, right? Based off like the numbers. Because a lot of these things like cost per acquisition, like lifetime value, like a lot of these really important metrics will require multiple sources of data from multiple departments a lot of times too, right? And so we that if you're starting off, that's what we help you set up. Just getting it ready to go. We usually typically we usually start with like just marketing, sales, and finance because that's usually like what they're focused on initially, is just getting as much sales as possible. So we make that as predictable as possible. Then one level up, once you're hitting like you're starting to scale and you need to know your numbers and you're running paid ads now and you're having a team, like now you got to know your closing team. Who are your top performers, right?
Yeah.
Who's hitting KPI, who's not? How fast can you bring a new closer to hit KPI? Does it take longer 30 days? Okay, maybe something's wrong with your hiring process. Maybe there's something wrong with your onboarding process, right? And that's where we actually get granular, like, okay, where are things slipping, right? And then we got to track like client success measures, right? How many people are churning on a monthly basis? Like how many people are getting ascended, right? Who are your top client success managers that are pulling more revenue from your current client base, right? Because it costs, I think it was like 7 times more expensive to acquire new customers than to just
That's right.
retain some,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So it's like, okay, how can we keep these customers and make sure that they're as happy as possible and they refer as many people as possible? So we do certain things like surveys. Surveys are super important, right? We do this for also for beginners because I love something that you set up once and then you forever have like results from, right? So like
Yeah,
you
so
set
it's
up
like evergreen, yeah.
evergreen, exactly, right? Set and forget. That's like I love that expression. So it's like you set up these surveys. For example, like we do like onboarding surveys. Like after someone finished an onboarding call with you, or like a sales call with you, or even they want to churn or whatever, we just set up all these different surveys. So as soon as we set it up one time, and now we have customer very very valuable customer data that will be with you forever and give you these valuable insights. And then we also set up these things called like conditional logic, where it's like, let's say we have an onboarding call, and then we ask them, hey, or let's say there's someone's in the program for like 6 months already, and we set up an onboarding or a survey that sends out after 6 months being with us, like, hey, how are you liking, your experience working with us at Focus System so far? And if they give us like a really good rating, like let's say like we do it out of five, so like a three or like a 4 out of 5 or a 5 out of 5. We're like, okay, awesome. We're so glad that you had this experience with us. Would you be open to sharing your experience in a 10-15 minute conversation? And then we give them a link to their client success manager and we interview them. And then that becomes a testimonial. And then we ask them for referrals. And then that's how we can get more people, right? And then the same thing happens if they have someone that is like having a bad experience with us, to give us like a 2 out of 5. Then we're same thing, send an automation. It's like, oh, we're so sorry you had this experience with us.
Oh, yeah.
Here's a link to our client success manager. Hopefully we can save that client, right? So it's all about being proactive. So yeah, there's a
That's
lot to
so
like.
good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's like almost like internal retargeting in a way. Um, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know if that's a thing, but I kind of came up with that.
I like that. I
Um,
like that.
yeah. So yeah, definitely easier to, um, you know, reactivate existing customers than it is to get new ones because usually customers have to have a certain amount of touch points. I'm not sure what the figure is, but some people say something between 8 and 14 touch points of your brand before they're actually trusted enough to buy. So these that are already on the system have already had those touch points and they've already had
Yep.
experience with the product. So now it's about getting them to refer or to purchase again. And so yeah, that's super powerful. Cool.
Yeah.
So what is the best way for someone to get in touch with you if they would like to explore more about getting these services? I will put everything in the link. So
Yeah.
would it be like going to your website or your Facebook profile? What is the
Yeah.
best?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram for that matter. Yeah, just DM me. We're also right now, and I don't know if anyone's gonna watch this in the future, that we're currently doing something for the next like we only have capacity for literally like 10 people, and this is not fake scarcity or anything. Like we only can actually handle 10 people for this, is we're doing a free AI data dashboard. So we're actually gonna be building these in-house for the next 10 companies. So they can choose if they want client success, they want sales, they want marketing, like whatever department they want with a 10 KPIs and have an AI, system attached to it. We're going to be building it directly in their business for them. And so that's for the first 10, like I said. So if anyone's interested in that, you can just hit me up with that. There's also a link on my socials with that. But best way to reach out is just you can DM me on Facebook or LinkedIn. That'd be the best way.
That's so good. Cool. And I'll also include some links as well. And how does someone participate in your group? Do they just join the group or they have to contact you first to get the invite or how would it work?
Either way, yeah, you can join that. It's just gonna ask you some questions about like what's important to you for data and all that good stuff, like the usual Facebook group, right? So yeah, but you can also reach out to me and I'll send you the link of how to join that as well. Because we also do have a lot of freebies there. Like we have a data starter kit and this data advanced kit. These are free resources of like all the tools that we use, how we think about data, the mindset behind data, because there's definitely a mindset when it comes to data, becoming data
Yeah.
driven. And so we break that all down we call it our systems vault. It has all the resources of how we think about data.
I'll be very interested to check it out. Yeah. I also would like to get more into a data-driven mindset because, hey, data is power, data is money. And yeah, definitely want to as I level up, I want to level up my data as well. Yeah. Do you have any final words or advice that you would like to leave with the audience?
Advice. I think it's like I've always wanted to build a business that was almost like the 4 hour work week where you can look at something like not I work more than 4 hours. I'm not saying you should only work 4 hours, but just that the ability to have that freedom if you want. And the way you can get that is going to be through systems and data for sure. Because if you don't know your numbers, if things aren't really clicking for you, you're being reactive, then it's going to be very, very difficult for you to have that freedom in your business, right? Without you actually knowing by the numbers if things are going well or not and where to scale. So I'd say become data driven, stay focused, and scale the moon together. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's a excellent message to leave with the audience. Thank you so much. And thank you for being with us on the show, Nigel. Really appreciate it. And to our audience, remember to please check out all the links in the description and please make contact with Nigel if you have any need for data-driven systems. All right, until next time, and remember to dream big and build bigger. See ya. Cheers.
Yes. Bye.